welcome back. This week we're going to be talking about contracts. I like to think of contracts as a living document, which means they evolve with you and with your relationship. And I want you to be thinking about a contract as a relationship tool that you can use in a variety of ways, and that ultimately you want that tool to support you. So for some people, the purpose of a contract is going to be so that they can show how much control they want to have over their partner. They're going to find that arousing and exciting. It may also be a way for them to more formally structure things and create their authority for their partner. And for some people, it can be just a log of your relationship and what has transpired and what your goals are and how you want to move forward and sort of record progress towards those goals. So those two things look and sound very different, but really it's the same type of document and it's functioning for the same purposes overall. So you kind of want to think, what does this document mean to me and how am I going to use it in my relationship so that I can get the most out of my work that I put in? Because anytime you make a big document like this, it's actually a lot of work. And you want to think, how am I going to use it? And am I going to use it again? Is it worth this amount of effort? And what do I want to use it to keep track of? So I think it's really great as a way to keep track of some of the rules that you want to have in your relationship, some of the goals, and then some of kind of the ground rules of the things that the two of you agree upon. And then you allow that to evolve as your relationship changes and progresses. So one of, I think, the biggest mistakes that people make with contracts is they spend all this time making a really complex document that has all of these rules and all of these things on it. And then, a month later, a year later, years later, none of it is relevant anymore because it was so rigid to that specific slice in time that it was created for. And that, I don't want to say that's a waste of time because it could be a very exciting thing to create this document. It could feel like a really big connective activity for you and your partner. But ultimately, if you're putting this amount of work in, you want to think, how can I be using this as a tool to move us forward and help us grow? So as part of that, you want to consider what are the elements that you're going to put in it in addition to how you're going to use it. And you also want to consider how often you're going to review it. Is this something that, you're going to look at weekly for a while, then maybe over time it becomes monthly, and then maybe after a while you only review it every 6 months or once a year. And that kind of tapering off of needing to check on it is something that will happen naturally over time as it becomes more solidified about what the group of you are looking to accomplish with it. At first, you're going to want to make a lot of tweaks to it. So you start making it and then you realize, oh, I really want it to include this information. We've been arguing about this for too long. I think it really needs to be in there. So if we think back to Elaine and Jeff, for example, they wanted to have a pretty formal contract, actually, that included some of their rules around how the bathroom was going to be cleaned. So they included their minimal standard of care, their reasons why, and then what the rewards and consequences were going to be for that particular activity because it was so important for their relationship. So it actually had a big section of their contract. But they may find in 6 months that cleaning the bathroom has kind of lost its charge. It's just become a natural part of Jeff's routine, and it's not really that exciting or that big of a draw anymore. So in that sense, we want to allow the opportunity for the contract to evolve as their relationship evolves. And they may find that when they come back in 6 months that they don't really need that document anymore at all, and they don't really want to update it. They just kind of want to move on. But it served them really well at the time. So you can see how this is something that you just kind of want to have some flexibility around it so that it can support you and what you need it to support. So you'll find that there's a template that I've added to the course materials. It should be right below this lecture. that has a fairly informal outline with some wording for control and authority in it, but mostly just as a place that you can really start to record some of these aspects if you want to. There may be parts on it that you don't need at all, and there may be parts that I didn't include that you feel are critical for it for your relationship. You do you, right? This is just supposed to be a little bit of encouragement and a little bit of structure so that you don't feel like you're starting the document completely from scratch yourself. And also because some of the documents that I've seen that are the contracts that you can kind of get for free online and download have really authoritative language and are really highly structured towards a very strict BDSM or kink style dynamic. And this course is really encouraging you to have a relationship first and have kink as a part of that, or have that be a supporting role, secondary really to the primary aspect of your connection and relationship. So this contract kind of comes from that perspective where I want you to be thinking about your goals, your rules, kind of what supports you. And a lot of this is reiterated at the front of the template. There's kind of a little synopsis of basically this lecture. You'll also find very similar information in the workbook. And the workbook doesn't include the template. So the template has that form so that it can stand alone as a piece of material that you can use to learn about contracts a little bit and then execute. And then there's some more considerations and tips in the workbook that you can kind of combine together. So there's a little bit of redundancy there, but it's also just to kind of help you learn and to help those two tools to stand alone when you've printed them out. Something else I want to add about having a contract is if you do put all this effort in to make it, you really need to make sure that you have the intention of reinforcing it. So that's something that we've talked about kind of throughout the entire class, is you really need to be willing to follow through. If you're going to make rules, but there aren't consequences to those rules, and you're not kind of following through and reinforcing the things that you're creating, then there's no purpose and you're not really going to be able to create the dynamic and fluidity that you're looking for. So you have to want this. It has to make sense to you. It has to be a tool that you're going to consistently use with pieces of information on it that you plan to enforce and follow through on. And a part of that is also not overcommitting. So only putting things on there that you feel like you can execute. So it's really common for people when they're making contracts in a new relationship or adding kind of this element to their relationship to want to make a huge document with tons and tons and tons of things on it. So we talked in our rules and consequences section already that we really want to try to keep things simple whenever we can, because it just gets overwhelming and it becomes hard to follow and hard to keep track of and hard to reinforce. And that's going to be true for this as well, especially because it's going to contain a lot of your rules and consequences in it. So don't overcommit. Allow yourself the flexibility of having this be a living document that you can add to as you become more accustomed to the things that you've put on it. And only put the things on it that you feel like you have kind of the energy to control and execute at this time. And then again, just coming back to kind of wrap it up, really think about what the purpose is of the document for you and for your partner, and what you want it to symbolize, what you want it to represent, and then how you want it to carry you forward, and how are you going to utilize it to carry you forward and help you grow individually and as a couple. So there really aren't a lot of rules. You really want to design it for what works for you. So let us know in the forum how you like the template, if it's different than what you've used before, if there's sections that you added to it for yourself, for your relationship, because other people might want to add that section for them as well. Or if there are things that just don't even make sense to you and you're just going to edit that Word document by taking them right out. So, again, this is something that's just for you. So it would be great to hear how different people have adapted it. Because I'm sure that will help other people who are exploring and maybe are newer to this than you are. Because no two contracts are going to be alike. Even if you've had them in previous relationships and you're making a new one now for a different relationship, it's always going to be very different. The tone's going to be different. The items, the rules, how you want to use it, it's all going to be different. So allow space for that flexibility and let us know how it goes. Great, thanks. All right, so this is just going to be a short little lesson that's going to kind of give you a conclusion or a summation of the course. As I want you to feel like you kind of understand how all of the pieces of all the things that you've been working on, how they fit together, and why I kind of thought each piece was relevant. So to do that, we're just going to review what we were trying to do. So we learned that play was an integral part of creating a happy adult life, and that BDSM is a form of play. And then we learned that BDSM and play are both forms of leisure, and that they create adventure, and that adventure is a fundamental component of how we have strong relationships. Therefore, kink is a big part of how we can have really great, functional, happy, and playful relationships. And then, that is difficult to achieve. It's a good desire, but it's difficult to achieve. And therefore, a lot of people end up oscillating in how much they participate, which leads to trust issues and resentment and a lack of submission or participation from your partner. So our desire was to free up space and emotional energy for kink participation while making that participation more straightforward. So we talked a lot about trying to make windows that we can put our creativity within during that. So what were all the things that we really talked about that allowed us to do that? So we acknowledge the value of play. We have an egalitarian approach so that our relationship will allow for increased satisfaction for both parties. We have a clearly defined division of labor that will allow us to automatically build in BDSM and kink elements into our daily lives without rushing or the confusion of finding space. That's going to improve our consistency and alleviate the oscillations of participation. It sets clear expectations and creates mutual respect. And then it also reduces resentment and conflict. And then by looking and studying our conflict and our conflict styles a little bit more, that also is going to reduce our conflict, which is going to free up emotional space and physical time and space so that we can build in these play elements that we know are so valuable more consistently and with more efficiency and proficiency. And then we also learned that knowing your partner really well and how they typically experience conflict will help kind of work through some of that, creating that space as well. I think if you really work through all these elements of really getting to know your partner well enough, learning how to attend to them better, learning how to use rules and consequences better in your play, using your conflict styles to prevent issues, and then really listening to one another, you can have a much happier and healthier relationship. And that is my hope for you. So my hope for you is that you can use the elements in this course to put more kink into your life and thus be more playful and have more harmony and less conflict. If you need my help for that, you just let me know. These are, again, the ways that you can find me if you need me. or if you need to kind of work through some of these things that you found through this course in a session, I'll be available to schedule that with you. And, you just let me know at any time if that's the case. Use the forums throughout the course to your advantage as well. And then just a quick look at the references. I talked a lot about Eve Rodsky. We talked a lot about Gottman and the Journal of Sex Medicine. So again, if you have any questions, you let me know. And I'm just so glad that you were able to join me and that you made it this far in the course. I really look forward to getting your feedback if you're open to that, so that I can make this course and other courses in the future more meaningful and purposeful for you. And that's the goal. So thanks again for being here, and I hope to work with you personally or see you soon. All my best.